know there's more to you than ticking boxes and chasing deadlines, and more to life than burnout, then this episode is here to uplift you and empower you and reconnect you with your energy, your values, and your purpose. I am joined on this episode by the iridescent Bianca Best, a woman on a mission to eradicate burnout and help people create big impact without sacrificing their well-being. I absolutely loved recording this episode. I hope you love listening to it as much as I enjoyed recording it.
Hey there, I'm Hannah Holden, and welcome to the Burnout Isn't Necessary podcast. If you're experiencing stress or burnout, I want you to know two things. First off, you are not alone. And second, you're in the right place. This podcast is all about sharing real lived experiences of stress and burnout. It's also about giving you deeper insights into what's happening when we're stressed and burnout, like the biology of stress. And of course, giving you actionable takeaways that you can put into practice in your life so that you can begin to feel more like yourself again. I hope you love the podcast. And if you do, I'd be so grateful if you would subscribe and maybe even leave a review or a rating. This improves our chances of new listeners finding us. Thanks so much. Now let's dive in. Welcome, Bianca. I am really pleased that you could join us. I'm excited because when I was doing my research for this conversation, I came across the words I think it was on your website, that you wanted to eradicate burnout. And since this podcast is called Burnout Isn't Necessary, I feel that we are fully aligned. So welcome.
Thank you. Yes, it's a noble mission that we're both on because it's absolutely true. We need to eradicate burnout. It isn't necessary.
Yeah. So for those who are listening who don't know Bianca is an award-winning thought leader, global executive, mother of four, inspiring speaker, highly qualified coach, and a champion of graceful productivity. Bianca has experience within corporate roles and as an entrepreneur, and she's developed strategies that empower individuals and organizations to thrive. She's on a mission to, here we go, eradicate the global burnout epidemic, impassioned by the belief that work should be a joy and not a struggle. So perfect. I think it's obvious why you're a guest on this podcast.
Yes, we're very synchronized.
Okay, so you've recently published a book called Big Impact Without Burnout, and it includes 8 energizing strategies to stop struggling and start soaring. What led you to write that book?
Well, thank you for having me on the show and for asking. I never set out when I was a little girl to be a burnout expert. That was not the dream. But sadly, life happened. And so I experienced burnout really from my mid-20s right up until 2015, so a decade ago. And for me, life was an adventure of lean into passions, follow what you're interested in. I mean, I always talk about my CV as being a chronology of passions explored. That was just what I did. I leaned into ideas and I seized them with gusto and I would try and expand them. But of course, what I didn't realize as life kept expanding and expanding is that I would need to modify quite how much I was giving of myself. And they don't teach us that at school. So as my responsibilities grew from having a home and DIY to having a husband and a social life and a fitness routine, and then children, not just one, not just two, but then 4, and then building a business, and it just grew and grew and grew. And suddenly everything is so multifaceted, and it was great and exciting and wonderful. But I didn't at any point think that having it all meant anything other than doing it all. So I really subscribed to that myth, and I just started slamming into walls from my mid-20s, where I would get burnouts that were not like a little flu or a little cold. So everyone in the household would get a cold, and I would get full on flu, and then it would turn into pneumonia, and I would just slide and slide. So we even had a nickname for them. It was the Binky burnouts, and everybody would know that I was down, I was floored, and I would be just unable to do anything, and I would be wiped for weeks at a time, like really wiped, and then lying there feeling ashamed and useless, but just couldn't wait to get back up on the treadmill. And so I was in this cycle of constantly high achieving, high impact. And I achieved my dreams, I achieved my goals. My business was flying. And I was super mummy and super fit, doing all the stuff that I had set myself as this is how a grown-up Bianca is going to live her life. And I was embarrassed that I wasn't quite capable of doing it all. Like, I really had a lot of self-loathing. I'd be lying there collapsed, floored with whatever virus it was that time. But I wasn't giving myself a break, and I would just get up and do it all again. And eventually my hair had fallen out. I was really, really skinny. I mean, I was literally physically so broken, but I'm living the dream is what I kept telling myself. And eventually a doctor said to me, you do realize you're having total, utter immune collapse now. Everything is starting to shut down. It's why your hair's fallen out and you were so chronically stressed. And even in that moment, I was in absolute denial. I was like, what do you mean? I'm not stressed. I'm not stressed. I'm living the dream. It's all so great. And I couldn't even see that I was hurting myself by living this full life and that it was all out of kilter. So I had to really start the work to understand what is going wrong and what is balance. Does balance exist? And how could I do that without shrinking any of my ambitions? Because I love having loads of kids. I love having a nice home. I love the richness of running a business. And eventually I went into corporate, which has been another amazing ride. But I wanted to keep doing it, but I needed to work out how to self-sustain. And so I spent a long time trialing how to have big impact without burnout. And 2015 was my last burnout. And because it was a gradual process of going from catastrophic being in hospital with immune collapse to gradually having slightly less burnouts, but still having them, until, eventually I got to this place where I was achieving ambitions, feeling happy, feeling fit, feeling on top of everything and not burning out. And so I've bottled that up and started hosting workshops, retreats, and certifying in all sorts of healing modalities over the past decade and a half. And now run the burnout business full time to make sure that people don't trip up like I did, because it's not necessary. But too many of us think that achieving our dreams involves a lot of falling over on the way, and it doesn't need to be like that.
So much of what you've said was very, very similar to a previous guest who was at quite a few episodes ago, a lady called Karen Mangia, and she wrote a book called something like Achieving More with Less or something like that, because she described this model of more. In order to grow your career, in order to have an impact, you have to take on more. You do more, you demonstrate yourself, you get more recognition. This is how you grow. This is how you expand. And then there's somewhere where there's a tipping point in your age and your career. You get to a point where you've said yes to so many things that now you need to change and shift your modus operandus. Like, you need to stop taking on more and finding a new way to have that impact without keeping on saying yes. And so,
absolutely.
With her experience, and her experience also ended up, she had terrible chronic health issues as a consequence.
Well, the other interesting thing is the different ideologies that you're living your life by. So one of the biggest ones for me was when I was running the business and the 4 children were under 7 and my business was just growing and growing. It was a personalized gift business, right place, right time. It just exploded. I had a belief that I would be failing as a mother if I had childcare. And so I was literally running the business around the children all day. My home had workers in it. Every single room was set up for a different department. The printer was in the nursery. The garage was the production area. Customer service was in the playroom. I was in the lounge. People were coming into the house, kicking the potties out of the way. I mean, I was literally running life as a mummy and an entrepreneur. And then when I would get the children to bed at the end of the day, I would then start work and do my thinking work, and thought it was normal to work through the night. And I just disregarded sleep. And it took me years to unpack this belief system that childcare meant I was failing as a mother. And it was only after that time the doctor said I was stressed and having a immune collapse and I had to stop, that I looked at every aspect of my life and I realized, wow, I actually can succeed as a mummy with childcare. And that was huge for me to unravel that. So yeah, it was tough.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds, wow.
Bonkers. It's bonkers, but it's because I'd been raised by a mum who was a stay-at-home mum, and I thought she was an amazing mummy. And so I'd subconsciously gone, well, that's how mummies are, and I'm going to be a great mum like that too. And I couldn't be. I was no use to anyone. I was in bed. I couldn't even be a mum when I was burnt out. I had to rely on family and colleagues, and I couldn't do anything. So, but that's the thing. I think we subscribe to these myths that are wonky beliefs. We don't even realize because we're just living in honor of other people's success ideologies. And that's the work, the really stark work we need to do to unpack how we're living and what actually serves us, not anyone else.
And so interesting that you didn't recognize stress in your life. I don't know, perhaps you were still in the mindset of it's all fantastic and I'm living the dream and I've built the business and I've got these lovely kids, and I'm assuming that just blinded you to the fact that actually you were running on adrenaline. I mean, that sounds like a life that just has to run on caffeine and adrenaline because you're not running on good sleep, right?
No, it was absolutely that. It was almost an addiction to the buzz, the buzzy high of productivity. And this is why I care so much about my mantra around graceful productivity, success with grace. There was no grace to my achievements. There was just frenetic buzz. And that buzz is unsustainable. Yeah. And you're right to notice that. It wasn't stress. I thought it was excitement. And I thought excitement was great, but it was stress. It was absolute stress.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting because I know I, for one, within my story, I recognize that living on adrenaline, bit of caffeine, a lot of adrenaline, unachievable, like it's just unsustainable way of like living, working, not sleeping enough, etc. So I recognize that, but not just that, the living on a wire and enjoying that sense of feeling like when I feel this level of adrenaline, this is me at my most productive. This is me as I'm making my impact. This is how I deliver value to the world. And so just like you said, becoming addicted to that wired way of living and not recognizing it as stress. I wouldn't have seen it. I don't think I'd have seen it as stress. I would have seen it as this is how I make an impact. This is how I show up in the world as somebody that's dynamic and
motivating. It feels motivating. Yeah.
I didn't want to really be another way. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and because it becomes such an ingrained pattern, even now, I will have mornings where I wake up and I'm in buzz mode and I have to catch myself and go, hang on a minute. No, you don't need a coffee today. I'm very, very sensitive to caffeine, which is why it was so easy for me to use it as a fuel back then. And a lot of the work I do now, I teach about fake energy and becoming aware of when you're using fake energy. But I will notice a behavior in myself where if I wake up and I feel good, if I've had the sleep that I needed and I feel good and I'm in peak vitality, there's something about if I've got a busy work schedule and I really feel like I'm going to achieve a lot today, or I'm excited about what impact I'm going to have today, there's some memory that is, well, great, have a coffee, why don't you? And make it even more magnificent, honestly. And I've gone to therapists. I work with therapists now. I'm such a believer in constant therapy. And even last week, I was with my therapist saying it's bubbled up again. And she was advising me to just, it's okay. There's the yin and the yang, and that sort of doing yang of just make sure I have my impact is strong, and it's served me and it's wonderful. But the soft yin, the flowy energy that I'm mainly in now just needs to integrate. And some days it's a little bit more present that I need to be working on integrating it and be conscious of it. So it's not easy. It's not easy. That it is addictive.
Yeah. And that's so interesting that you bring that up now about this integration, because it's actually something I've been reflecting on. We were on holiday over Easter and I really let go. in it, like really relaxed, really enjoyed it in a way that I hadn't allowed myself to do before. And observed myself in a far more feminine, relaxed, flowing yin kind of style of Hannah. And then wanting to bring that back with me. But when you're back in your environment, you're back in, back in the busyness of life, but also back in all the environmental triggers that you associate your behavior with. And suddenly I'm now grappling with this integration of the Hannah that I just want to bring a bit more of in. So I think it's very interesting that you've raised that.
Go on.
I was going to say, I wanted to dive into your comment about fake energy, but if you had something else on the yin and integration topic before we move on to fake energy, then please do.
The last strategy in my book is around fulfillment. And I don't believe we can ever feel truly fulfilled unless we are honoring our values. And in doing so, we step into a place of true integrity. And so you talking about integration of the softer you, that is who you are, but making sure that we are aware of that true soulful self, the essence of Hannah, and integrating that into our lives. That's what we're actually seeking. And the work that we're doing is to get to this place of fulfillment where we're operating in integrity consistently. And the challenge that we have is when we're in this duality of, well, I need to be this person to survive in a certain way. And it's so exhausting, whether it's turning up in the boardroom in a black pinstripe suit, or what I did when I went into corporate, cutting a fringe and just wearing suits every day and not being me. It's exhausting, and it might be impactful, and we might get promoted and we might earn loads of money. But actually, if we're not being authentically ourselves, we're not in integrity. And it's that distance between who we are in integrity and that effort it takes to maintain duality that creates the demise into burnout. It really does.
Interesting. Because there is the analytical me. There's the I put my consulting hat on as I step into, my IT consulting roles, and I know how to perform. I know how to get on stage. I know how to talk to people. I know how to run workshops, but there are kind of different versions of me. I wouldn't necessarily show up as my fully relaxed, kind of slightly away with the fairies version of Hannah that was on holiday into those environments. But,
that's still,
I haven't really asked the question of who am I when I'm in my full integrity, because I think I can be any one of those and still be in my integrity, I think. Yes, but I'm going to take that away.
You can. You can still be in your integrity and wear different hats, 100%. My mummy hat is different to my addressing 2,000 people hat, exactly as you've just described. But making sure that I show up in integrity makes all of that easier. It makes me vibe in a way that makes me naturally happier. It energizes me. And that's the difference. And too many people are just living out of their own integrity in all these different arenas. And that is why there's so much sliding down the scale into burnout.
Yeah, values is something that I think that if you are in alignment with your values, then it's kind of like, here's your path in life. And there are all these things that will distract you from your path in life, and expectations, what you think other people think you should be doing, all that sort of stuff, and being motivated by things that don't really mean anything to you, that you haven't really tapped into what really lights you up, but you think that it's money, or you think that it's the house, or you think that it's the job title or whatever. And so there are all these things that will take you off your path. And if you're true to your values, you will come back to that path and of yours. And yet, when I was talking to a friend recently about values, she was saying, what about all of the entrepreneurs who are following their dream, who are doing, like a coach, let's say, somebody similar to us. Now, I've realized that becoming an entrepreneur does not burnout proof you. So my burnout was in corporate, but doing your own thing doesn't protect you from burnout. And that in being an entrepreneur, you find yourself wearing a whole different set of hats. So suddenly you have to become the marketing person, the salesperson, everything for your business. And you may overinvest in your business and start neglecting your family or your friends or your fitness or the other things that you value. But I think so it was just a discussion that we were having about how somebody can be fulfilled by what they're doing. And yet, so I would say that they are becoming misaligned again with their values because they're over pursuing one value,
Yes.
but then neglecting the others. And so
Yeah.
I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Because I work as an energy coach as well as a classic life coach or executive coach, I am always interested in following the energy. So I'm looking at the resonance of where we're focusing our attention, and is that igniting us positively or is it draining us? And if you start to follow the energy associated with honoring different values, you very quickly start to see if there's potential misalignment, and you start to course correct. So values are brilliant as those guiding light posts to how am I going to honor my values as I work, as I behave, as I love, and ensure that I'm integrating the values. But when it comes down to actually sensing, am I over-indexing in one, to use your analogy, then it's about following the energy. And only we can individually, bio-individually identify what is actually pulling us out of kilter or not. And it's up to us to architect our lives in honor of that vibrational pull. So with my clients, we do lots of breath work and we get into the body, and it's all out of the mind, into the body, and it's how do you feel? And I'm trying to sense the different almost electric pulses around different aspects and different dimensions of their lives, so that we can understand if there are gaps or blockages. And I work with the biofield. I actually am interested in sensing the flow of energy through the chakras, and I'm really deeply trying to understand energy science, and about to start a 4-year degree with Barbara Brennan. And I'm really going into understanding what we can't necessarily measure yet, but we can feel, because I believe that is so guiding in how we can self-manage and really maintain and thrive and deliver all the impact that we want. But it's very out there. So if I was sitting with you and your friends and we were having a bit of a chat, I'd bring it into energy. I really would.
That is so interesting. I didn't realize that was a direction that you were going in. So I'm trained in a couple of different yogic modalities, and one is Kundalini yoga, and that also talks a lot about the energetics and very much, breath work and how we can use our bodies. It's very so sometimes it's referred to as a technology, sometimes as a science, but effectively what that's talking about is that people who practice Kundalini yoga are their own scientists, they're their own experimenters, and we can use the experiments of prior people, prior yogis, in terms of how we move the body and the effects it has. So there are certain things that we can do. We can move in certain ways, and they have predictable outcomes, which many people will experience. So one of my favorite postures is a star posture, where we open up across the chest and create space. And it's very uplifting, and it's consistent, with everybody who practices it. That's
wonderful.
And so, yes, it's then we can become conscious, right? Then we can make conscious and intentional decisions about, I feel like this, I want to feel like that. How should I move my body in order to get those outcomes? And it's about shifting the energy, right? It's about shifting the blockages, shifting the energy. Fascinating.
Fantastic.
In contact as you do your 4-year degree. It sounds very interesting. And I'm about to undertake an advanced training in Kundalini. So we'll stay in touch on that.
Perfect. Well, the first strategy in my book is energy, because I believe if we don't understand our own energy and the dynamic flows like you've just described, I didn't know, I'm not a yogi. And not many people do understand the delicacy and the sensitivities of the body and the different energy systems. So did you get to yoga after your burnout?
Both. So I dabbled in it before, and originally when I came to yoga, I came to it as a form of exercise, but a more relaxed form of exercise than what I would normally do. So I used to hit the gym hard.
Yeah.
And this was my kind of, this was as yin as I would go at that time, as kind of chilled out as my exercise would go. But I did come to it from an exercise point of view. And then the more I did it, the more the relaxation, the meditation stuff that's also entwined in it became what I was returning to it for.
Okay.
And for me, it was a big game changer in a couple of ways. So first of all, in my burnout recovery. So first of all, I started doing a morning practice and committing to a morning practice, which subconsciously, I didn't realize it. It wasn't a conscious thing, but subconsciously, what I then was doing was I matter most, I serve myself first. So there was this subconscious message that by showing up every morning, and to begin with, that was that, Hannah, you're going to get on your mat and you are going to at least spend I did have to be quite rigid with myself. But by doing that subconsciously over time, I began to improve my self-worth because I was showing up for myself first every day. The other thing that was happening was as you move through yoga practices, some of them are quite fast and it's quite hard to, you're still quite externally focused because you're just trying to keep up with the instructor in front of you and you've got no idea what a warrior one looks like and you're frantically looking around the room and then they've got to move to the next posture. And so some classes are not quite like this. But many practices encourage you to experience how you feel in your body at that moment and become introspective and really tune in to what's happening in your body. And that was a broken skill for me at the time when I experienced burnout. I think I would sit and I would work long hours and I wouldn't listen to my body about thirst or hunger or needing the toilet or anything. I was just becoming a bit mechanical and disconnecting. And I think at the point that I was in burnout, I was all in my head, very busy, very, very busy, like, constant negative thoughts that just ran and fed off of one another and just ended up in places that shouldn't have ended up in, because it was all just kind of busyness in the head and all intertwined thought trails and not grounding into my body. And that was the other thing that yoga was beginning to gently show me how to do, to begin to listen to my body and tune in and ground and become a little bit less crazy, chaotic, head brain.
Amazing. And amazing. I've never got into yoga myself, but I'm very into the breath work, the body, the meditation and the stretching. And my morning exercises, I'll do some poses, but I'm not flexible and I can't get myself into that. And I forced myself. I even made myself go on a yoga retreat. I was like, right, you're going to do a whole week. And I tried again 5 years later, but I'm happy with my decisions. And
in my definition of yoga, everything that you've just described that you do is yoga. So because I would be more all-inclusive in my description of yoga. Yoga has 8 limbs and it's not all about being able to touch your toes. And in fact, my hamstrings are not great.
Okay. Oh, that makes me feel better. Thank you.
My downward dog is not ideal, but I am still a qualified yoga teacher and I practice yoga every day because it's my version of yoga, which is the all-encompassing version. And much of it is about breath work. I mean, breath work, pranayama, is one of the 8 limbs of yoga. And asana, the physical movement, is only one of the 8 limbs. So breath work has kind of an equal relevance. Many of them are about how you live your life. And understanding, like meditative states. So actually yoga is far more all-encompassing than being able to wrap your legs around your head.
That's great. Thank you. Well, maybe I am into yoga then.
You're already doing it. You've just found your version of yoga and it's not
exactly.
Get yourself in the mirror and trying to wrap your leg around your head style of yoga. Yeah. Right. Well, we've gone on topics. I love the way that these conversations, we always have an idea of what we're going to cover, and then we always just dig into wherever it takes us. But let's come back to this point about fake energy, because both you and I were running on that adrenaline and that coffee, burning fuel that we didn't have in our bodies, right? And thus the ending up in burnout. So let's talk about, how do we understand the difference between a sustainable energy and living in a sustainable way versus living on fumes and fake energy?
Fake energy, it really is the scourge, I think, of today, because I watch children drinking these energy drinks and assuming that is a way from school age. They assume this is a way to survive. And I found something horrifying out the other day, that in some of the energy drinks that are sold in supermarkets today that our kids can access off the shelf, in Denmark, they are only available behind the counter in a pharmacy to over 18s.
Wow.
And yet we are allowing children to just grab them off the shelves in this country. So there's a huge disparity of what is and isn't allowed in terms of food and fake energy from country to country. And we know that there's a problem with ultra processed foods. But what society has done is normalized, you're tired, don't worry, have this. There's a solution, and it's in a pill. Or an energy drink or a cup of coffee. And we've really normalized that. And each one of us will have a different response to, how do I pep myself up? And for someone, it might be the sugary donut at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. For someone, it might be a Lucozade Sport. For someone, it might be Prosecco. That used to be my favorite thing. Friday night, absolutely shattered. I wanted to go out in high heels and sparkly trousers and drink shed loads of Prosecco. That used to be my way of getting fake energy to keep going and going, even though my body was like, lie down, read a book. But no, I would keep going. If we have a cold, normal medications, like a really common, a Lemsip, for instance, just packed full of phenylalanine and caffeine. And so constantly we have access to stimulants which are giving us fake energy. And because society has normalized that, we're lulled into this reality that is, keep going, keep pushing through, ignore your body, ignore the fact that you're shattered, ignore the fact that it's time to sleep, push. And as well as these fake stimulants, we've got warped potential ideologies. Like, I grew up in the 80s, which was all work hard, play hard. Sleep is for babies. It was not a culture of nurture and nourish. And that has shifted a lot now, where sleep is revered as rightly as it should be. But the fact that so many of us are living in this high-wired, faked realm of caffeine dependency and artificial stimulants, uppers, and then we wonder why we can't sleep and we can't relax. What it's doing is it's actually destabilizing our homeostatic state. So our physical state is constantly being pulled away from its natural, gentle state. And that takes its toll. So it's very much robbing Peter to pay Paul. You might get that little short-term high, that short-term kick, but ultimately it is just going to batter you. And it's creating a subtle stress that is depleting you energetically. And it might make you feel a little bit mentally sharper initially as you get that kick of energy. But ultimately, the physical debilitation will start to slow you down, and then the lows start to become a lot worse, and you're weakening your immune system when you're not in harmony, when you're not living in harmony with your natural energetic rhythms and that natural cadence that you bio-individually have. When you disregard that, you're creating a constant simmering stress that just eventually takes its toll. So you're just increasing the likelihood that you're going to be susceptible to burnout because you're just not listening to your body. And it's a huge problem. And one of the things that bothers me most in this arena is caffeine, because I actually see caffeine. I wrote a blog recently about this: is caffeine as dangerous as cocaine? Because there are people like myself who are very sensitive to caffeine, and yet it's normalized. Have another. And society encourages and celebrates coffee culture and caffeine. And yet I believe if we actually eliminated caffeine, which at its source is a pesticide, it's not actually designed for human consumption. If we eliminated caffeine or made it a class A drug, people wouldn't know what the heck to do with themselves, or we'd have this massive crisis in humanity where people would have to adjust to life without caffeine. But B, I think we'd start to get a little bit closer back to natural energetic rhythms, and we'd start to self-manage more competently, because we're so far from even understanding what our natural rhythms are. When do people have a cold and just go, I'm going to go to bed today with some chicken soup and some hot water and lemon? Obviously, I'm generalizing massively, but there's so much out there that just says, ignore that cold, take this pill or potion and push on through. And it's really bad.
Yeah. Which I think loops us back to what we were talking about before, about being in your head and being disconnected from your body. And I've talked quite a lot recently about interoception, which is the ability to bring to your awareness the messages from your body. How do you feel, etc. And that in burnout, you don't normally have that, because you're just so disconnected. You just haven't got a clue. And so effectively, these energy drinks and caffeine and so on are adding to that, because it's another way that we can ignore what our body's telling us, in much the same way that if we've got, if we've got something that's painful and we just continually take painkillers for it and dull out the pain, we're not actually solving the root cause of the problem. And likewise, energetically, if every time we feel like we're a little bit tired, we're not replenishing ourselves, but instead we're just artificially fixing the problem, then we're not addressing the root cause. And in fact, we're making it worse, because we're now turning down the kind of, we're telling our body that those signals are not important, that our desire for sleep is not important, that we don't recognize that, we don't acknowledge that, we don't value that, we don't prioritize that.
Absolutely. In fact,
bringing us closer to burnout.
Yeah, and then there's an example as well. It's not just fake energy, doesn't just have to be food or drink. Exercise, you'll know, gives you a great adrenaline kick and a lovely high. I had a client who was feeling exhausted, absolutely shattered at the end of the day, like really not feeling great, but so used to feeling shattered and exhausted, she pushed on through, went to the gym, assuming that would give her a bit more energy. And she woke up in an ambulance. She collapsed in the gym, in the changing rooms, didn't even make it into doing her workout, because she was at the time chronically anemic. So that was the cause. But the fact that she had shut down her receptivity to her body's warning signals just shows it's such a good example of what a crisis that we're in societally.
Yeah. So you've touched on in your book title, there's the 8 energizing strategies, and you've mentioned, so the first one was around energy and the 8th one was around values. Can you give us a quick tour of what the others are?
So the first 4 strategies are all about going within, because I really believe without the solid inner foundations, you can't actually go out and have the impact you want in the world. So the first 4 are inner, and then the latter 4 are about going out into the world. So the first one is around energy. So tuning into your bio-individuality to learn to optimize your energy. And basically you build your harmonic energy state map, because that's my desire, that we all learn our individuality and work out how to get to this optimal energized state. Then the second one is around mindset, and really ensuring that we step out of victim into self-accountability. And no, it's not anyone else's fault, and there's no point blaming the boss or the kids or the husband or the wife, because actually we need to take accountability for how are we showing up for ourselves, which I love that you've just drawn out there. And then the third strategy is around time. And I don't talk about time management in the time boxing and the traditional business ways of looking at time. I'm very much around time flow management, so that you start to fall in love with time, you embrace focus and flow, and actually time starts to expand, because it really does. When you follow your energy and your excitement, time does expand. The example I always use is when you fall in love, suddenly, you've got all the time in the world to be with that person, and it just expands. So the third strategy is time. And then the fourth strategy is purpose. And it's around getting your life architected in such a way that it's filled with meaning, and you're full with motivation because you're connected into your purpose. And it's about deconstructing purpose as this ethereal, hard reaching thing that's about saving the world, and is just tuning into what is your purpose, what makes your life meaningful, minute by minute, day to day, and honoring that. So they're the inner foundations. And then we get into the outer impact, because once you're solid and you're in your firm ground, then you're ready to go out and sparkle your magic out into the world. So the next strategy is around work. And really that builds on all the experience that I have as an entrepreneur and as a corporate business leader, and how we can ensure that we thrive in any work environment and we make our work tuned in to what matters most to us, but we ensure then that it's our boldest, our brightest work, and that we put it out there in great shiny magnitude. So that's work. And there's lots of very pragmatic ways of just going through how you make sure that you are delivering work that is really aligned with your skills, your strengths, and what. Did we freeze? Did I freeze?
We did. You froze at where you were saying work is what were you saying? Aligned to do work that's aligned to our skills and our strengths, and so on. So let's see if we can edit it so that you pick up somewhere there.
Okay. Let me think.
You could start with number 5. You could start with work.
Fine. And then, yes. Okay. So then we come into the next strategy, which is around communication, because life is only ever going to feel as marvelous as the quality of the relationships that we have. And so how we manage relationships is incredibly important. It all comes back to communication. And communication really is about speaking our truth, showing up authentically, learning the impact of how we communicate, whether it's with a social network, a corporate network, how we give, how we receive, whether it's with our life partner, whether it's with our colleagues. The way we communicate and the way we connect and the way we treasure relationships or not is really critical to our impact. But again, it's something only we can control. So learning how to lean in and nourish different communities that we have access to, or different relationships that we treasure, learning how to listen there's a lot of that in that chapter. Certainly in the corporate world, my experience where egos are rife, there's been, the art of listening is really important. So there's a lot of learning how to listen, but also how to speak. I spent many years working out how to get the confidence to be able to convey the messages that I wanted to convey on stage, and had to really work through a lot of exposure therapy to become confident to get on stage. It's such an important skill for any one of us if we want to be able to influence, not negatively, not manipulating, not being nastily political, but just learning how to influence so that we can create positive impact. All of this comes back down to being an effective communicator. Then the next strategy is wealth, and it's wealth based on the interpretation of whatever abundance is for you. And it's such an interesting question that I always ask new clients, where I ask them to describe what wealth means to them. And I had a lovely client recently who, as I asked her to describe her relationship with wealth, she just burst into tears and she started crying. And I said, where are these tears coming from? What's this about? And she just said, I just feel so lucky with my husband and my family and my children. And wealth for her is 100% around family. And so she feels abundant. in that realm. Whereas a lot of us have distorted relationships with success and wealth being tied to money and status, everything you were describing earlier on in our chat. So it's about understanding what our individual relationship with wealth is and what success looks like when we redefine it based on our own wants and needs and shun society's ideologies of success and actually construct it based on our own version of wealth. So that's that chapter. And then the last one is around fulfillment, where we step into integrity.
Wow, that sounds like a really rich set of topics to explore in a book. I haven't read your book, I will be honest, but
that's okay.
After listening to you describe it, it sounds really rich and deep, and yeah, I love those topics. I love what you've got in your eight strategies. So maybe I will. Maybe I will.
Thank you. Please do. Let me know what you think.
Before we wrap up, is there anything that you wanted to leave the audience with? Is there anything that any parting messages? If there's one thing that they could take away from this conversation, what would that be?
I absolutely believe that you are the star of your own story. And I really believe each and every one of us has the right and the potential to sparkle and shine. And please just don't ever forget that.
That's lovely. That's lovely. I've heard some people even go further and kind of say it's our obligation to be here, to shine, to be the best or the fullest version of ourselves. So yeah, I love that. Thank you. Yeah. So if anybody wants to find out more about you, then your website is biancabest.com. And your book, let's see your book.
Here it is.
So Big Impact Without Burnout. And that's the 8 energizing strategies to stop struggling and start soaring. And you said that that's available anywhere books are sold. So yes, that's an easy one. All right. Thanks so much, Bianca. It's been absolutely lovely chatting to you. We went into topics I wasn't expecting, and that was really good.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an important podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you loved this episode. If you have questions or you're looking for a safe space to continue having conversations about these topics, then I'd love it if you would come and join us in our free LinkedIn community. It's a space for real conversations, sharing of tools, tips and experiences, and also to hold live sessions where we get to talk to one another about how we navigate stress and burnout. There's a link in the show notes, or you can search on LinkedIn for Burnout Isn't Necessary and you'll find us under groups. One final reminder, this podcast is for education and inspiration and is not a substitute for professional support. You take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time.